Hi there, welcome to the Bonsai Stuff podcast. I'm Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu. Thanks for listening as always. Today I want to talk about your bonsai collection. We've got limited space, well 99.9% of us have got limited space, and we can only hold a certain number of trees, and I want you to choose carefully. I want to talk about the enthusiasm that we have as bonsai owners. We're an enthusiastic bunch, I tell you. We have eyes bigger than our bellies, especially when it comes to bonsai and what we have in our backyards and what we want to have, what our driver is, and how many trees we want in our collection. And normally, it's generally at the start of your bonsai life that you go a bit crazy, a bit insane. It comes across my workshop all the time. I see it where people are always chasing another tree, another variety, another species, something else to put in their collection. You know, they cut branches and they're filling their bags to take home to do cuttings. They're asking about seeds. They're walking through parks and collecting seeds to plant, and it's lovely. It's one of the joys of being a tree lover is that you just want to be around trees all the time. But it's one of those things that we need to put a lid on every now and then, just to slow it down a little and maybe just check. And I want to run through a few things, a few pieces of advice that I would like to give you that may help you just temper your enthusiasm just a little bit. All right, let's get to the podcast. So this podcast, the idea for it came obviously through interactions with a lot of people and a common thread that seems to come across the path, but it's the concept or mistake of wanting one of everything in your collection. When you start, you just want it all. I know, I've been there, I've done it. You start, acquiring seeds, then nothing that you ever take off, any trees that you ever work on goes into the green bin until you've had the opportunity to at least try and take some cuttings and fill your grow area. Now, I've talked about it before, that the idea of, 1 to 2, one branch divides into 2, 2 becomes 4, and year upon year upon year, the workload starts to really magnify and grow exponentially. It just gets out of control very, very quickly with a lot of trees, to the point that if you have too much of a good thing, it can really start to deteriorate the overall quality that you've got in your yard. So this concept of one of everything, where I originally started, and almost everybody, I presume, listening to this podcast at one point or another have said, I don't have one of those in my collection, I'm going to add that to it. You get to the point where you start adding trees that may not necessarily grow well in your environment, in your yard, but the place gets very full very quickly. And it's a common thing. It's okay. We need like our own little self-help group where we can pat each other on the back and say, it's okay, you've got far too many seedlings. You need to start looking at a place to move these on and start to sell them, and joining bonsai clubs and doing their sale days and that sort of stuff. It's great. But what starts as very small can grow quite rapidly. And I've talked about the lifespan of trees being, very, very long in comparison to us. And what starts now is easy work. In 3 years' time, which goes past in the blink of an eye, what starts now as easy can suddenly become quite laborious, especially if you start taking lots of cuttings or planting lots of seeds of the same variety. That's when you really get caught out. You might have 100 seeds for trident maples or Japanese maples, something like that. And all of a sudden, they all need work at exactly the same period of time. And I know this is. I've made a note in my podcast notes saying this is me when it comes to pines, because at one point I was overwhelmed. Had so many pines in the collection that it's just hard to keep up with the work as well as living a life and doing everything that you need to do. So I thought it's valuable for me to put my hand up and say, yep, look, I had a problem and it's been resolved. Please don't make the same mistakes as what I did. It was the weekend trip to the nurseries, bonsai nurseries, any nursery really. You'd walk through, or I'd walk through the conifer section of any nursery, and without fail, I would grab a couple of trees. The bargain bin of bonsai nurseries I'd be filling the boot with it, like going, how good is this stuff? Like, this is great. I've got so much to work with here, so much choice. But there's like I said, there's a downside to it that they all require repotting. And it doesn't matter if you're repotting, one tree or a million trees, they've all got to be done the right way. Cut corners on any of that stuff and you pay the price for it. So if you've got these, 100 maple seeds that grow into 100 maple seedlings, there's going to be 100 pots that need to be repotted. And it might not sound like much when they're tiny, and you might have a plan in the back of your head to say, yep, no problems, I'll sell them on, I'll make them into a forest, I'll do this, I'll do that, whatever it is. But more often than not, that doesn't happen, and you end up with these trees that suddenly start to get, a bit crook, not quite as healthy as what they were, because they're not getting looked after like they should be, like they were. And you're repotting, then you've got to upscale the pots, so then you've got to find 100 bigger pots to put these things into. And then I haven't even started talking about the amount of work that's needed when it comes to wiring, styling, shaping, pruning, cleaning, pest management, fertilizing. There's a lot that goes into it. And if you become inundated with the number of trees that you've got in your yard, I guarantee the enjoyment side of it will start to go down. And that I wish we could bottle the enthusiasm that a beginner has when they start looking at bonsai and their eyes burst. It's brilliant, because everything's got potential. The way that they look at trees, the way that you may have looked at, or you are looking at trees now, it's like, yep, that's a beautiful tree. Like, look at this one, that movement, that bark, that trunk, that foliage, that flower, that whatever it is. It's all got an opportunity for you to make it into the best bonsai in the world. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be great. I guarantee you that's not always the case. And sometimes just sitting back and drawing breath is often the best way. Great enthusiasm needs management. It needs a handbrake. It needs someone to come in and pull the handbrake and say, hang on a minute, just take a deep breath, look at what you're about to embark on. And it's not like, you pick up a bonsai, unless you want to sell them, of course, but you're not picking up a bonsai to say it's only with me for a few years and it's gone. It's like you're making a decision that a tree is going to join you for its entire journey, and you're going to give it absolutely everything you can. Your side of the contract is to make sure that tree gets exactly what it needs when it needs it, no matter what the circumstances, no matter what the noise is that's happening around your collection or around your life. That tree's still going to need you to be actively involved, making sure that it's looked after. Every year when it gets to repotting season, which is just around the corner, literally around the corner now. It's only a few weeks away before we have to start repotting deciduous, before I start repotting my deciduous. And I look at my grow benches and I look at what I've taken cuttings of, and I just scratch my head sometimes and say, why have you done this to yourself? Why have you got yourself in this predicament where you've created all this extra work for yourself? And I get it. Hand on heart, I get it. Every single year comes around, and every single year I'm saying to myself, no more cuttings, and every single year I take more cuttings. I avoid seeds like the plague now. I don't want them. I really don't. A lot of my big black pines that I've got around the yard produce a lot of cones, and I just simply let them fall on the ground. I don't need any more. I did grow some a few years back now, and I promised I wouldn't do it again, but I have. It's one of those things that you never completely clean of this stuff when that enthusiasm, the eyes light up. Oh, that's a really nice little cutting. Look at that branch I've just cut off. The movement that it's got. Oh, that'd be a great small tree. Or you're focusing on the flowers that the tree gets. Oh, that'd be really nice if it was another bonsai. Trust me. You'll just send yourself down a rabbit hole where you won't be able to adequately look after the trees. You'll become overwhelmed with them. And if you are saying to yourself that you're trying to acquire more trees, just look at the physical size of the trees. Go to a bonsai show. Look at the size of the trees that they're going to get to, and keep in mind that yours might be nice and small right now, but sooner or later they just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the benches start getting fuller and fuller. So look at what you've got available for bonsai display or housing in your yard. Take a tape measure out and work out and say, okay, well, on average, the trees are going to be 30, 40, 50 centimetres wide. Okay, and how much room have you got? And how many benches can you get where they're all going to get adequate sun? That's your magic number. That's what you are stuck with. You cannot put any more than that into your yard unless you put them on the roof or on top of the shed, something like that. Once you've got that maximum number, that's what you have to work with. And I do like having multiple of variety of the same species, because you can really refine your techniques and get the maintenance on it correct. And it's not something that you look at and go, oh, I've got one, for instance, black pine. How do I decandle it again? If you've got half a dozen, it becomes it's like riding a bike. You can get up to speed pretty quick on it. So I'm not saying that you have to have just one of everything or all of one variety, but don't put it on your list that you've got to have one of everything. If you try and get one of everything in your collection, you'll end up spending too much time on substandard stock. And that's what I mean by visiting the nurseries without an objective. It's nice to go and walk around bonsai nurseries. I love it nothing more than anybody else. I really, really enjoy seeing different variety, and I love looking at things going, that's got potential. But I've also got to have the discipline to say, no, I'm not acquiring that tree. I don't need that variety in my collection. Maybe do some research on it. Maybe it's too late. Maybe you've already purchased it and you're on the way home from the nursery right now. Congratulations if that's the case. But really, it's not the sort of thing that I strongly encourage anybody to do. You really have to take heed or stop and think and really make sure that the tree that you're about to put in your collection for the next 100 years is exactly the tree that you want, that it's got the potential that you want. And the next point I want to make is, when you are acquiring trees, when you are out there with this enthusiasm and you're looking at the trunk and the bari, please consider the tree's genetics. And that's so important. There's lots on the trees that we can't change. There's a lot that we're stuck with, and good genetics is one of those things that really should be a primary focus. And I know I don't want to go down the path of changing foliage with grafting and that sort of stuff. That's for another time. But if you can acquire good material that's got good genetics, then you are on the path to achieving great bonsai. If you simply look at the trunk, for instance, let's say it's a nice big beefy trunk, and you ignore the genetics of the tree, then there's a lot of times, depending on the variety of tree, but a lot of times you can't change very much about that foliage that's on there. So if it's a pine variety that's got long, like let's call it a Mugo pine, for instance, or a Scots pine, or any pine, radiata, whatever. If you've got one of those trees that's got really long needles, or the needles might be all bent and twisted, there might be some things that you can do to try and help with the strength of the needles, but there's a lot, like the length of the needles might change fractionally. We can't do things like decandling on those single flush pines, so we might be limited to a certain extent with what we can do. So getting a tree initially that's got very good genetics will put you on the path to saying, okay, now I've got to work on ramification, branch placement, branch selection, primary branches, whatever, secondary. But with the genetics of it tucked away, you're on the right track. I saw a beautiful trident maple the other day that had amazing corky bark on it, like really flaky, crusty bark that was just beautiful, and lots of muscular growth on it as well. It just looked really, really nice. And that's the sort of genetics that you focus on. If you've got a tree that's, you're told, that's sort of 30 years old and there's not much bark on it, well, there's a good chance there may never be good bark on that tree. There's no point buying something going, yeah, this will develop really nice bark sometime in the future, if for its whole life it hasn't already. So, yeah, sure, there are exceptions to it, but I'm just trying to point you in the right direction, to give you the right focus, to say that really good genetics can't be overlooked. And the other thing is to buy when you buy a decent piece of material, when you are out there and you're in a frenzy, if you look at your bonsai time that you have left, and I've heard this I cannot tell you how many times I've heard it where it's like, I don't have time to plant seeds. I'm really wanting, I've got 5-10 years of active growth left. Other people are saying, well, I've got 50 years ahead of me, so I'm going to be starting to plant seeds. Fantastic, brilliant, awesome. So no matter what it is or stage that you're at, when you are buying a nicer trunk or something that's more developed or something that's more advanced, it may not necessarily be ramified, but it might be a more advanced trunk development that you need to start working on branches. You're actually buying someone else's time. Someone else has put all the years into developing that tree, and that's worth something. That's worth a lot of gratitude and also money. They can be quite expensive when people put it in, but that's the nature of the beast. That's what bonsai is. It's you are paying someone for what they've already put into that tree and how they've developed it already, so then you can take it to the next level. Because no matter what you're acquiring, there's always another level. And when you look at your collection, what I'd suggest is, rather than going for a variety of species, I'd be strongly encouraging you to look at going for the range of trees that are in different stages of development. That's where, for me, I think a lot of people get most bang for their buck. Like having material that is just starting, that you are putting your fingerprint on, that's a young whip, a young seedling, or a seed, if you want to go back that far, right the way through to something that's got a nice trunk that you've got to start, growing primary branches. Or, once they've got primary branches, then and you've got to maybe shape and bend and position those branches into the right place, then you start working on the secondary branches, and then all the way through to a refined tree that looks beautiful. It's a piece of art that really just needs maintenance work done on it. The different stages of development have so much potential for you to get so much more out of each of those different stages, and having all of your collection in one area. Let's say it's all at the refinement end, just doing maintenance. It can get a bit boring. And I think this is part of the reason why I still take cuttings, and I still, in the past have planted seed, because I really enjoy that development process, that taking something that's, maybe 10 centimeters tall as a cutting, and watching it grow and watching it develop, and getting to the point where I go, you know what, you've grown to certain expectation, to certain size. All right, now it's time that I'm going to start working on you and start doing some primary branch selection. But that first part for me, that that initial development, that could be 10 years before I get something that I start to work on. So if you've got your entire collection in that first stage, then there's sort of 10 years before you can appropriately get into doing the nuts and bolts of the work. It's satisfying. It's enjoyable, but I really enjoy that combination of starting something as well as finishing something, having everything in between as well. And if I look around my yard and I think I would have nowhere near as many sacrifice branches on my trees if I didn't have refined trees. If I didn't have trees that were at the pointy end of being finished, then I wouldn't still be doing development on these other trees. I would be pushing them harder and harder to say, well, I want a finished tree. I want a tree that I want you to be done. I want you to get to that point where, there's nothing more to do. So I would be a lot more aggressive and less patient, I suppose is the right word. Less patient with trees to get there and be a much better tree. So having something, and you might only have room for 10 trees in your yard. You might not want more than 10 trees. You might want 1,000, whatever it is. But I'd still think that having something that is at that real maintenance phase where you can enjoy not just doing the big heavy work at the start of the tree's life, but doing the light, delicate stuff. Getting out those thinner wires and working with them, because it's so much more enjoyable than working with 6mm wire where you're bending trunks and rather than looking at a tree every time going, I don't know. Do I cut this off? Do I keep it? Do I bend it? Do I restart the leader? Do I need to build taper into my trunk? Before you go through all of those questions, it's nice to look at it and go, geez, that looks nice. They're the cup of tea trees that you sit down with a cup of tea and you just look at them and smile, because they're the real deal. They're the finished end, and you look at it and go, okay, yeah, all right, so I'm going to maybe remove a bit of foliage here and open up that pad, or I'm going to pinch the new growth as it comes out, or maybe it's a partial defoliation or whatever it is. But it's a completely different mindset doing that sort of a tree compared to something that's right at the very start, and it's good for you. And I just want to push on with just one last fact before we wrap it up. I think that it's really important to make sure that the bonsai that you select are destined for success in your climate. It sounds really simple. It sounds overly simple, but it's so true that a lot of trees get taken away from where they're growing really well and put into a different environment, and that can be from one house to the next. One house might get a lot of wind, the other house might be sheltered and not get any wind. So there's a difference of meters that can make such a massive difference. Even around your own yard, you'll find that there's areas that are more exposed than others that are quite sheltered. So you've got to find that delicate balance, and bringing trees from different climates into our environment or your environment where it's completely different from where they're thriving. You might find that while they can exist, it may not be as good a relationship as what you'd hope for. So, and immediately to mind for me, I know that when I travel north and I see ficus growing in the northern states, it's like, wow, even across anywhere, Adelaide, there's beautiful figs. Whereas in Melbourne, I really, they just don't do quite as well in my yard. It's the cold. They really don't seem to like it, and I don't have the setup. I don't have the facilities to really change that very much. So it's a variety or a species that really is not on my target list for my yard. And you might live around the corner from me, and you say, well, mine grow really well. Fantastic. But I've worked out for me, that's not something that I can really, really hone in on, because I just don't have the environment for it. So the environment that you've got, your microclimate, the backyard, your bonsai growing area, your display area, whatever it is, it's unique. And you need to make sure that, often you learn this the hard way, but you've got to make sure that you've got appropriate trees that will thrive in that area. Because it's not just a matter of treating water. We want these trees to do really, really well. The better they do, the more advanced they're going to become, the happier you're going to be, the better your bonsai journey is going to be. So it really makes a big difference putting in the time prior to acquisition to try and work out what is going to do well. I've talked about local natives to your environment, your area that are growing well around your house or your home or whatever it is, wherever you live. They're great because they're targets. They're going to thrive in that area. Maybe a bit boring because you see them every single day of the week, but those trees do really well. And you might find that if you are bringing trees in from different areas, then speak to local people, local bonsai people that grow them well elsewhere, and say, well, what do you do? How do you look after this variety? How does what's your care regime? And maybe just flex a little bit. Don't be so set and this is the way it's got to be. It's okay. We'll talk to the local experts, because I'm sure that they will push you in the right direction, and the trees will do much better. So anyway, I just wanted to spend this podcast, make it a bit shorter than the last couple. They've got away from me a little bit, so this is a slightly shorter pod, less rambling, hopefully. But I want to talk about call it the concept of one of everything, but I really think it's a mistake to go for one of everything. My advice would be to you, don't go crazy. Just cool your jets. Really do your research. Don't throw away your hard-earned. Just make sure whatever you've got in your yard is going to do really well, because that's my interest. My interest is that you love your bonsai forever, and that your trees become the beautiful bonsais that they deserve to be. So we're early winter now. It definitely feels like it. It's getting chilly, getting cold, nice short days, almost at the winter solstice, only a few weeks away. So it's all about to happen. The trees are well and truly dormant. Everything's nice and sleeping. And it's a matter of what we do now with this first part, because, as I said, for me, when I get into that second month, repotting starts. So the last couple of months of winter for me are busy times. So I've got really this June period to try and knock my pine work on the head, get that fully finished. Got to get ready for repotting. You know, I love to be prepared, a little Boy Scout, make sure that I've got everything lined up. So if you are repotting, just make sure that you've been through the process. I've been banging on about, flagging trees for repotting to make sure that you know what you're up for. This is the last call, last shouts. Get into it. Make sure you've got your materials, your soil that you want to use, your pot mesh, tie-in wires, pots, all that stuff. This is the month to get all that sorted out, so you're not under the pump when it gets to, or you miss the window. That for me is the biggest fear that I have, is that I don't get everything done before they come out of dormancy, because once they come out of dormancy, for me, that is it. I'm not repotting. I'm not taking that risk. So be on the earlier side, not on the latter side. Watch for root rot as well with the trees. I don't think I talked about it, but root rot stinks. The root system really starts to smell. I talked about the slime and sludge and that sort of stuff on top of the trees, but as we get further and further into the wetter periods, the root system will really start to stink. So I would be making sure that, if you have a bit of a smell, if something feels a bit too wet, have a good sniff of the soil, and it should smell fresh. If it smells like it's rotten, then more often than not it's going to be. So you'll need to take some action on that to make sure that it doesn't get any worse. It's also almost time for me to lime sulfur my trees in the yard. But with that comes the time that it's probably a really good job to put on the list for the next couple of weeks, to get the trees off the benches and clean down the benches. Give them a spray with some lime sulfur, mixed accordingly, not 100%, but mix it accordingly, and give it a bit of a spray too, because they don't often get a chance. And once spring gets here, you get too busy with pruning works and whatever else. So I like to use this June period to do a bit of the housekeeping for my collection, which, as I said, includes making sure that I've got the benches cleaned off, wiped down, sprayed. Remove any debris that's there from overhanging trees or any leaves that have fallen off. But it's really time to pull your finger out and do a bit of work around the yard before you start getting busy again. Thanks for listening in. I appreciate the company as always, and you will hear me again next week with the Bonsai Stuff podcast. I love the support for the subscribers, and I always wrap up with a thank you to the subscribers. But you're fantastic. You're brilliant. Have a great week in bonsai, and until next time, happy bonsai.